There's an Amish farmhouse sitting in the middle of Ohio right now. It's August. The thermometer outside reads 94 degrees, and the family inside hasn't touched an air conditioning unit in nearly 2 decades. Not because they can't afford one, not because they don't know they exist, but because they figured out something a long time ago that the rest of America was quietly steered away from. And by the time you finish watching this video, you're going to understand exactly what that something is and why it was buried. Let that sink in for a second. 94 degrees outside. Cool, comfortable air inside. No compressor, no electricity, no monthly bill. Just a dark column running up the south wall of the house, doing its job the same way it has done every single summer since a grandfather built the first version back in 1947. His son refined it. His grandchildren grew up knowing how to build one from scratch. 3 generations of a single family passing down knowledge that the rest of the country was told it didn't need. Oh, because somebody else was getting very, very rich making sure you stayed dependent. This is not a fringe theory. This is not some eccentric survivalist trick. This is physics. Old, proven, undeniable physics. And the reason you've never heard about it has everything to do with a corporate explosion that happened in 1951, the year a single company changed the direction of American home construction forever and made sure a quietly brilliant report sitting in a North Carolina University archive never saw the light of day. I want you to picture something for a moment. Imagine standing in a house on a sweltering afternoon, the kind of August afternoon where the air outside feels like wet concrete pressing against your skin. You walk through the front door expecting relief from a machine, from that familiar hum and blast of refrigerated air. But there's no hum. There's no machine. The windows are closed. And yet the air inside is cool, genuinely, noticeably, comfortably cool. You look around the room trying to find the source, and there's nothing. Just the faint, almost imperceptible sensation of air gently moving across the floor towards you. That's the moment that changes everything. That's the moment I want every single person watching this to understand. The technology responsible for that feeling is called a solar chimney, and it is so simple, so elegant, and so devastatingly effective that once you understand how it works, you're going to feel something close to anger. Not because it's complicated, but because it isn't. Because the reason you don't already know about this has nothing to do with science and everything to do with money. Here's what happens. You build a vertical column. Think of it like a tall, narrow box against the south-facing wall of your home. The outer face of this column is covered with glass or a clear polycarbonate panel. The inner surface behind that glass is painted flat black. That's it. That's the core of the machine. When sunlight passes through that glass and strikes the black surface, the air trapped inside the column heats up fast, and hot air rises. That's the entire engine. No moving parts, no fuel, no maintenance schedule. Just the same basic law of physics that sends smoke up a chimney and lifts a hot air balloon off the ground. As that superheated air races upward and exits through a vent at the top of the column, it creates a zone of lower pressure inside the house. That lower pressure pulls fresh, cooler air in through vents positioned low on the north-facing wall, the side of your home that never gets direct sunlight, where the air temperature stays naturally, several degrees lower than the sun-baked southern side. The result is a slow, steady, continuous river of fresh air moving through your living space around the clock, powered by nothing except the sun and the laws of thermodynamics. Here's what happens on a really hot day. The column heats more intensely, the draft strengthens, and more air moves. On a cooler, cloudier day, the effect softens. The system self-regulates. It gives you exactly as much cooling as the day demands. No thermostat required, no human decision needed, just physics running on autopilot. Now, here's where it gets deep, and here's where the story shifts from fascinating to genuinely infuriating. This technology is not new. It's not something the Amish invented in a vacuum. Passive solar ventilation was understood and documented thousands of years ago. The ancient Persians built wind towers called badgirs as far back as 4,000 years ago. Tall structures specifically designed to catch the wind and channel cool air down into buildings while pushing hot air up and out. The Romans engineered their villas with open central courtyards that created natural convection loops, keeping interiors comfortable through brutal Mediterranean summers. Traditional builders across Egypt, Iran, India, and the American Southwest all incorporated passive airflow strategies into their architecture, not as luxury features, but as essential survival knowledge. These weren't primitive guesses. These were refined systems, tested over centuries, passed down through generations of builders who understood convection before scientists ever put a name to it. And here in America, that knowledge didn't die. It was studied, documented, and then quietly abandoned right at the moment it was needed most. In the years following World War II, a network of land-grant universities across the United States was conducting serious, federally funded research into passive cooling and ventilation for rural homes. The USDA published multiple extension bulletins on the subject between 1945 and 1953. Researchers at Cornell, Purdue, North Carolina State, and the University of California were running field tests, publishing data, and writing practical construction guides designed to help ordinary American families stay comfortable without depending on expensive electrical systems. This wasn't fringe research. This was mainstream agricultural science, paid for by taxpayers, with an explicit mission to improve the lives of regular people. One of those researchers was a man named Harold B. Thompson, working out of the North Carolina Agricultural Experiment Station near Raleigh. Thompson spent 6 years testing solar-driven ventilation systems on the university's experimental farm. In 1951, he published a report titled Passive Ventilation Systems for Farm Structures. In it, he described exactly the kind of solar chimney column we've been talking about, and he documented something remarkable. A properly sized and constructed column could reduce indoor temperatures by 12 to 18 degrees compared to an identical, unventilated structure, even on the hottest summer afternoons. He recommended it for farmhouses, for rural schools, for any structure where families needed relief from summer heat without access to expensive mechanical systems. He included construction diagrams. He listed materials. And the total cost for a complete installation? Under $100 at 1950 prices, which, when you adjust for inflation today, works out to roughly $1,200, still less than a quarter of what a central air conditioning system costs right now. That report was never updated, never digitized, never incorporated into any modern building code or home improvement curriculum. The funding for passive cooling research evaporated almost overnight by 1954. Thompson himself left academia 2 years later to take a job with a heating equipment manufacturer. His report currently sits in a handful of university archives and has been cited exactly twice in the past 70 years, both times in obscure academic papers about the history of agricultural engineering that virtually nobody reads. What happened in between? What caused this abrupt, total abandonment of research that was actively helping people? The same year, Thompson published his findings. That's the year the Carrier Corporation, the industrial cooling giant founded on Willis Carrier's 1902 invention of modern mechanical air conditioning, released its first mass-market residential window unit. General Electric followed within months. Then Fetters, Philco, and a dozen other manufacturers piled in. Window AC unit sales went from a few thousand per year to over 1 million within 3 years. By 1955, the industry was moving more than 2 million units annually. By 1960, air conditioning wasn't a luxury. It was being marketed as an absolute necessity, a sign of progress, of modernity, of being a proper American family, and nobody was funding research into systems that didn't need to be plugged in. Think about what that means. The companies selling those units had every financial incentive in the world to make sure you believed mechanical cooling was the only real option. Every household that discovered it could cool its home with a black column and a pane of glass was a household that wasn't buying a unit, wasn't paying for filters, repairs, refrigerant recharges and replacements every 10 to 15 years, wasn't running up a summer electric bill that, for the average American household today, exceeds $300. In hot climates like Texas, Arizona, and the Deep South, families are spending close to $1,000 every single summer just to stay comfortable. Multiply that by 70 years. Multiply that by 100 million households. The number gets so large it stops feeling real. The Amish didn't forget because they never adopted the alternative. Picture this, a community that simply never plugged in. When you can't use a compressor, you don't stop thinking about staying cool. You find a different way. You refine it. You teach it to your kids, and they teach it to theirs, and the knowledge stays alive in hands and habits and wooden frames on south-facing walls, not in government archives that nobody reads, not in academic databases. In lived practice, tested summer after summer, improved generation after generation. Now here's the part that I spent 3 years trying to find. The piece of that 1951 report that almost nobody ever talks about, the detail buried in a single paragraph that changes the performance of this entire system dramatically. The standard instruction for building a solar chimney says to paint the interior absorber surface flat black. That works. Flat black absorbs around 90 to 97% of the solar R energy that hits it, depending on the brand. But what Thompson's research team discovered during their testing between 1950 and 1951 is that the shape of that surface matters just as much as its color. They found that a corrugated surface, the same kind of rippled metal roofing material you can buy at any farm supply or building store today for about $15 for an 8-foot sheet, increased airflow through the chimney by nearly 30% compared to a flat sheet painted the exact same color, 30%. The research team expected maybe 5 or 10. 30% was a shock to them, too. Here's why it works. Imagine this. When sunlight hits a flat black surface, it heats the surface itself very effectively. But air is a poor conductor. the thin layer of air directly. Touching that hot surface warms up fast, but it has trouble transferring that heat outward to the rest of the air column. The hot air kind of sits there against the surface in a smooth, slow-moving sheet, what scientists call a laminar boundary layer. And the air just half an inch away stays significantly cooler. The system works, but it's fighting its own geometry. Now, swap in a corrugated surface. Here's what happens. The ridges and valleys break up that smooth boundary layer completely. Instead of a laminar sheet, you get turbulence. Air from the hot surface tumbles and mixes with cooler air further away. Small rotating eddies form in the valleys between the ridges, constantly pulling fresh, cool air down to contact the hot surface and pushing heated air away into the column. The result is dramatically faster heat transfer from the surface to the entire air column, what engineers in industrial applications call enhanced convective heat transfer. The same principle has been used in automotive radiators and industrial heat exchangers for decades. Nobody thought to apply it to solar chimneys because nobody was paying attention to solar chimneys. This single change, swapping flat sheet metal for corrugated roofing panels, is the difference between a system that makes your house noticeably more comfortable and a system that becomes your primary cooling solution on all but the most extreme days. So what does this actually look like for someone who already owns a house and isn't building from scratch? There are two approaches, and here at Secret Vault we've seen both work for ordinary homeowners with no construction experience. The first is an exterior add-on column. You frame it against your south-facing wall using standard 2x4s or aluminum angle brackets. The outside face is clear polycarbonate, available at any hardware store, very inexpensive, lightweight, nearly unbreakable. The inner absorber surface is corrugated metal roofing panel painted flat black with standard spray paint from any hardware store. The gap between the glass and the metal should be about 3 to 6 inches, enough room for air to flow freely but not so much volume that the column can't heat it efficiently. You connect the bottom of the column to a small vent cut through your wall at floor level, and you run the top of the column up above your roof line, where lower wind pressure helps pull air out rather than fighting against the draft. On the opposite side of your house, ideally the north or east wall, shaded as much as possible, you cut a matching intake vent low to the ground. Fresh, cool air comes in. Hot, stale air gets pulled out through the column. Total materials cost for this kind of installation runs between $150 and $300, depending on what you can source locally or secondhand. A retired electrician in rural Virginia built one of these in 2019 and watched his summer electric bill drop by 40% in the first season. He was using the solar chimney for afternoon and evening cooling, which is precisely when utility rates peak in most parts of the country. The system paid for itself before summer was over. For people who don't want to cut any holes at all, there's a freestanding version. You build a tall box structure, black on the inside, clear panel on the sun-facing side, and position it against a south-facing window. The window acts as the intake. The box does the heating. Air rises out the top and draws house air through in a steady stream. It's less powerful than a wall-mounted column because vertical height is limited, usually 6 to 8 feet, but it costs almost nothing. There are documented builds done for under $50 using salvaged sliding glass door panels and scrap lumber. The results are real and measurable. 6 to 8 degree reductions on sunny afternoons, which in a basement or ground floor room makes the difference between unbearable and comfortable. Now, there's one more dimension to this that almost nobody talks about, and it's the thing that makes the solar chimney not just a summer gadget, but a full-year system. In winter, the same column that exhausts your house's heat in August can heat it in January. The physics doesn't change. Sunlight still hits the black surface. Air inside the column still heats up and wants to rise. The only difference is where you direct it. You install a pair of simple dampers, mechanical flaps that can be opened or closed manually in less than a minute. In summer mode, the top vent is open and the interior connection is closed, so hot air exits outside and creates the cooling draft. In winter mode, you close the top vent and open the interior connection. And now that 120 to 140 degree air inside the column on a clear or January day has nowhere to go except directly into your living space. On a sunny winter day, with outside temperatures in the 30s, the interior of a well-built solar column can reach temperatures that would feel remarkable if you put your hand in front of the vent. Warm air flowing steadily into your home, reducing your heating load, costing nothing. Some families make the switch twice a day in spring and fall, warming the house before breakfast with winter mode, flipping to cooling mode by early afternoon. One damper opened, one closed. Less than 60 seconds of effort. The physics takes care of the rest. The sun does not send you a bill. It never has. It never will. And the families who understood that, who built these systems with their own hands, taught their children to maintain them, and quietly kept this knowledge alive while the rest of the country was being handed a monthly payment obligation, Those families are the ones sitting comfortably right now while you're watching this video and wondering why nobody ever told you this existed. That question, why nobody told you, is the one that should stay with you after this video ends. The research existed. The documentation existed. The working examples existed, tested across multiple summers, across multiple states, across multiple decades. A $100 solution documented in a government-funded report in 1951, sitting in an archive that hasn't been meaningfully cited in 70 years. And in the same year that report was published, an industry worth billions of dollars was born and began its very quiet, very effective project of making sure you believed there was only one way to stay cool. This is the kind of knowledge that the Channel Secret Vault exists to find and put in front of people. The knowledge that wasn't lost, it was set aside, deliberately, quietly, and profitably. And now you have it. Think about every summer electric bill you've ever paid. Think about every window unit that rattled and failed and needed replacing. Think about every service call, every refrigerant recharge, every 10-year replacement cycle on a central system. Now think about a dark column on a south wall that your grandfather could have built in a weekend for $100 that would have kept running without a single repair, without a single filter change, without a single wire running to the utility grid. The grief in that comparison is real. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But here's what you actually have right now. You have a choice you didn't have before you clicked on this video. You can keep doing what the industry designed you to do. Or you can spend a weekend and a couple $100 and start building something that belongs to you completely. That the power company cannot raise rates on, that no part shortage can disable, that no manufacturer can make obsolete. Something you can teach your kids to build. Something their kids will still be using long after the last window AC unit you'll ever buy has been hauled to the curb. The sun is going to rise tomorrow. Physics is going to keep doing exactly what it's always done. The only question is whether you're going to use it. Drop a comment right now and tell me. Have you ever seen anything like this in person? Have you tried any passive cooling before today? Or is this the first time you're hearing that any of this exists? Because every story in these comments shapes what comes next on this channel. And if you want to keep going down this road, if you want to know what else was quietly shelved the moment it stopped being profitable to talk about, then you know what to do. Stay with us. There's a lot more buried where this came from.